What is up, guys? This is QRem from the Trinity of Lift, and today I'm going to bring all of you guys my Lunalight deck profile post Dark Illusion. Now then, this build of Lunalights that I'm bringing all of you guys today is a more standard, more OTK based Lunalight build. As the reason why I mentioned this now is because the last time I showcased a pure Lunalight deck on the channel, it was a more consistency focused, control-y kind of Lunalight build, and a lot of you guys were getting all over my case because I wasn't running the quote-unquote standard build. So I did decide to make that OTK based build today, and the only reason why I felt like this build is going to be the one I want to run in the future is because now that Lunalight Perfume is a card, I really do feel that the OTK build of Lunalights is a lot more consistent and it feels a lot less awkward to play. So again, without further ado, we're just going to jump right into the deck profile, starting off with the main deck. So, for the first monsters, we have 3 copies of the Lunalight Blue Cat because she's your I'm Not Going to Die Today card, as she has the ability to block 4 attacks by herself if you cycle your cards correctly. And also having the ability to double a Lunalight monster's attack on your side of the field whenever it is special summon is also pretty nice, and that first part of the effect, which is the doubling the attack part, is a lot more consistent as well to actually use in the deck because, again, Lunalight Perfume is now printed. So yeah, in general, we have to have 3 copies of Blue Cat because of just how much it brings to the deck. Moving on, we have 3 copies of the Lunalight Black Sheep because more copies of Polymerization is always nice. And in general, you want to have 3 copies of this because if you can fusion summon, 99% of the time you will be wanting to try and use Black Sheep as a fusion material because it really just does help your card economy to ensure that your fusion summons don't make you go -3 or something like that. So yeah, we have 3 copies of Black Sheep. Then we have 3 copies of the Lunalight White Rabbit, because having a Cook Soldier Wolfbark in the deck is always really nice just to get more monsters on your side of the field for either rank 2 plays or just more fusion fodder on your side of the board to use. So again, in general, White Rabbit is really good at 3, and also being a mini giant Trunade is also really nice. Moving on, we have 2 copies of the Lunalight Purple Butterfly. Now, I really did not like this card at 3 because I feel like at 3 you're going to draw it a lot, and you don't really want to draw this card a lot, as really outside of Allure of Darkness fodder and Fusion fodder, you really won't be using Purple Butterfly's effects that often, although again, it does come up in those rare situations where you might have to use a sort of weaker Lunalight Fusion monster to punch over bigger things like Cosmo Dark Destroyer and whatnot. But another thing I want to say is I also didn't like this card at 1, as that was what I was testing originally, but it was kind of like that idea where if I was only running 1 copy of Purple Butterfly, there wasn't really a use for it because you really wouldn't see it often enough where you can actually use the effects when you need it. And in general, it was just a really awkward one-off to run as well, so I just feel 2 is the perfect median for this card. So yeah, that's why we are running 2 copies of Purple Butterfly. Then we have 3 copies of the Lunalight Tiger because in general, having a card that is essentially 2 different ways to monster reborn Lunalights out of your grave is always really darn good. And it's also a level 3, so again, rank 3 plays are pretty cool as well. So we have 3 copies of Tiger. And then finally, for the last Lunalight in our deck, we have 3 copies of the Lunalight Wolf. Now, we have 3 copies of Lunalight Wolf because you really actually do need this card for every single one of your Lunalight OTKs, as the way that you do push for the OTKs in this deck is by summoning multiple Leo Dancers in 1 turn and then attacking. And the thing is, it's impossible to actually fusion summon 2 copies of Leo Dancer in 1 turn just with things like Polymerization, because obviously you usually will need all 3 Polymerizations just to make 1 Leo Dancer. So because of that, you really do need to use Wolf for the 2nd copy of Leo Dancer for your big OTK play, because you really just do not have resources in your deck to fusion summon 2 Leo Dancers in 1 turn. Again, if you didn't have Wolf. So because of that, that's why we're running 3, because we really do want to see it as often and as early as possible. So yeah, we have 3 copies of Wolf. And then finally, for the last monsters, we have 3 copies of Maxi because this deck always wants to go 2nd. Like, if you ever have the chance to choose between going 1st and 2nd, you always want to go 2nd, and you really do need Maxi to draw into your combo pieces as quickly as you can. So again, we have 3 copies of Maxi to round off our monster lineup. Alrighty then, moving on to our spells, we have 3 copies of the brand new Lunalight Perfume. Again, similarly to Tiger, this is essentially a monster reborn for Lunalights, but another cool thing about this card that I didn't notice off immediately is that Lunalight Perfume is a not once per turn card, so if you draw multiple copies of Lunalight Perfume, you can just keep using it over and over, again, as long as you have copies in your hand, which is again really nice. And the ability to search out any Lunalight monster in your deck, including Lunalight Wolf now, is also really, really good for the consistency of this deck. And just in general, in my opinion, Lunalight Perfume really did solve all of the problems that Lunalights had beforehand, because it just makes a lot of your awkward hands really, really good now. And again, it can search out Lunalight Wolf, which is one of the biggest weaknesses of the deck before, in that you have to draw Lunalight Wolf, as there was no way to actually search it out. So again, we have 3 copies of Lunalight Perfume because this card is just, in my opinion, really, really good for this deck. Moving on, we have 3 copies of the Polymerization because, just general fusion summoning, you need Polymerization in this deck because there's no such thing as a Lunalight fusion spell. But, I mean, I'm crossing my fingers that maybe one day we'll get that. But again, who knows with Konami. So for now, we are running 3 copies of Polymerization. Then we have 3 copies of the Fusion Recovery because, again, it's another free +1 in the deck if we can use it. And in general, also because of Lunalight Perfume's discarding effect whenever you do have to search a Lunalight monster from your deck, the ability to discard dead Fusion Recoveries as well is also really nice. So that's why I feel comfortable running 3 still, because it's a +1 when you can use it, and it's just free discard fodder when you can't. So yeah, we have 3 copies of Fusion Recovery. Then we have 3 copies of the Fusion Tag. Now, I think there's a lot of misconceptions of why this card is okay in this deck. Now, the reason why Fusion Tag, and to some extent Cattle Call, if you guys like that spell card, the reason why these cards are really good in Lunalights is because, like I said before, in a normal scenario, you will be needing all 3 copies of Polymerization in order to make any Lunalight Leo Dancer, because first you'll have to fuse into Cat Dancer, then you have to fuse into Panther Dancer, and then finally you have to fuse into Leo Dancer. Now, what Fusion Tag does is it actually just takes 2 Polymerizations out of that equation, because you're able to turn 1 Lunalight monster on your side of the field into a Panther Dancer, so that it essentially kind of acts as 3 more copies of Polymerization. That it's really awkward in my opinion, because again, you're not using 3 Polymerizations to make a Leo Dancer anymore, because if you turn one of your monsters into a Panther Dancer, you only have to use 1 Polymerization to make your Leo Dancer. Of course, you still have to use roughly the same amount of card economy to make said Leo Dancer, but the reason why, again, Fusion Tag is good is because it just helps you not use as many Polymerizations in one turn, so it just makes your combos a lot more consistent, because again, it doesn't require you to have all of those spells in hand. So yeah, we have 3 copies of Fusion Tag. Then we have 3 copies of Tenki because, searching out our entire deck is pretty nice, except Wolf again, but I digress. So yeah, we have 3 copies of Tenki. Then we have 1 copy of Tensu. Now, the reason why I have this card in here is specifically because of the late game, because even if Lunalights is an OTK-based deck, there are times when you end up having to just try and grind your opponent until you can push for game, and Tensu actually really does put in work in those later parts of the game. Because with Lunalight Black Sheep's effect, a lot of the time you will be grabbing back Lunalight White Rabbits from your grave into your hand. And the ability to use Tensu to normal summon multiple Lunalight White Rabbits a turn actually is pretty darn good. Like, there have been instances when I was testing this deck previously in which you do again need to make multiple monsters on your side of the field for various plays, and just White Rabbit is the best facilitator of that, because it does get you 2 monsters on board if you have its effect live, and being able to use White Rabbit's effect twice, it's just really darn good in those situations. So again, we have 1 copy of Tensu for those fringe situations with 2 copies of Lunalight White Rabbit. Then we have 1 copy of Instant Fusion, specifically again because Norden and Lunalight Blue Cat is a level 4, so we can make rank 4s in this deck. And then for draw cards, we have 2 copies of the Allure of Darkness, because again, drawing cards and drawing into combo pieces is always really nice, and it helps you get cloggy purple butterflies and other cloggy cards out of your hands. So again, we have 2 copies of Allure. And of course, finally, we have the 1 copy of Upstart Hoban, because, 39 cards. 39 cards! 39 cards and stuff. So yeah, that'll be it for the entire main deck. Moving on to the extra deck. Of course, it's pretty normal. There's not a lot of cool things, so we'll just get right through this pretty quickly. We have 3 copies of Cat Dancer because this is a formality. You need 3 copies of this card just because it goes into everything else. So yeah, we have 3 copies of Cat Dancer. Then we have 2 copies of Panther Dancer because, again, we need this card to go into Leo Dancer, but this is a good standalone card in and of itself where we can still use it to attack if we need to. Then, of course, finally, we have the OTK Machine. We have 2 copies of Leo Dancer because this card is nuts. So, yeah. That'll be it for all of the Lunalight Fusions. Moving on to the other one, we, of course, have the 1 copy of Norden because we have Instant Fusion in the deck. And then moving on to the XZ's monsters of the deck, we have 1 copy of Castel because it's good. We have 1 copy of Abyss Dweller because it's also good. We have the Utopias because frick Dark Destroyer. We have one copy of Breaksword because this interaction with Lunalight Blue Cat and Lunalight Tiger is pretty insane. And I'll be straight, when I was actually kind of embarrassed when I didn't think about Breaksword in this deck before, because when you can make Breaksword, it's pretty freaking amazing. So yeah, we have one copy of Breaksword. We have one copy of Levier because, again, we have level 3s in the main deck, and whenever we banish monsters with Lunalight Wolf, having the ability to get it back with this card is pretty nice. And of course, for the one rank 2 on our deck, we have one copy of Digusto Phoenix, again, to just push more damage when we need it. So yeah, guys, that will be it for my Lunalight deck profile post Dark Illusions. Again, I still will be looking forward to playing various incarnations, if that's the right word, incarnations of this deck in the future, because I really do like this deck, and I like to just really tinker with this deck in my free time, because again, in general, I love fusion decks, and because this deck is so aesthetic as well, I just really like to screw around with this deck whenever I do have free time. So again, I hope you all very much did enjoy this deck profile, and as always, this is QREM from the Trinity of Lift, and I'll see all of you guys later. Peace out.